The sneaky devs over at MiHoYo have a bit of a weird history making undocumented changes that sometimes make you wonder if they're just giving interns joke assignments that were never meant to be taken seriously, or they just like to screw with us. They could also be bugs, but that sounds a little bit too optimistic for my liking. Undocumented changes in themselves, they're no strangers to games. They happen all the time, but usually they're just insignificant changes that devs don't deem important enough to bloat patch notes with. But the ones that Genshin has that I've noticed they're just weird. Obviously these changes are undocumented, so they're hard to find any real history of unless you know exactly what you're searching for, or unless they stayed in the game permanently and people just eventually notice them. A prime example will be what was once known as this place. The Z became a C. I'm not going to try to pronounce this. I'll end up saying them both probably the same way, and I've learned from comments it's better to just not even try because you don't get any points for it. This one actually did have a reason though. You can still find it on Reddit if it interests you. But if you're like me, there was a time where you still visit this place almost on the daily to mine or kill the geosonics that call this place home. You might have noticed one day and just been like, what the f***? I thought this used to be different. Or maybe you just never even bothered to learn the locations of this game in the first place and you just called it Ore Mountain. Another location based on documented change was the one that happened near the launch of the game. The hole that we all know that we used to get to the Cryo Registine was almost once completely closed up by a large chunk of land, as if they dropped an entire fucking tectonic plate on the roof. Some people on Reddit claim it was a bug that caused this, but I don't know how you produce a bug so specific and so precise without affecting anywhere else in the game in a similar way. The only way I can justify this in my head is that they wanted to avoid newer players just falling in and having an unexpected encounter with our friend Cryo Reggie, since unlike similar Mondstadt bosses like Beth the Anemo Hypostasis or Goth Beth the Electro Hypostasis, you might not exactly see the Registine coming if you fall into this hole. I think that reasoning is pretty weak though. Getting wrecked by enemies that are far stronger than you when you're not prepared is part of the magic and practically a rite of passage in open world games, and it's kind of what makes them special. Regardless, it got changed back, thank God, so I guess that lends some credibility to it being a bug and not an intentional change, but I'm going to choose to believe it was not, and that they just got a lot of negative backlash from this because it was a stupid change, and I don't think anybody was happy about it. Even if you did fall in this pit with this boss, you can fast travel in the middle of combat, so it doesn't even matter. And despite the belief that that one wasn't a bug, this one just had to be a bug, because otherwise it was just downright evil. Down here by this Geo Domain that practically nobody ever farms is a little hole in the wall, and in this wall is an exquisite chest. It was decently hidden, all things considered, but by now everyone has the treasure compass unless you're relatively new to the game or you just never rep farmed for whatever reason, and you've probably found this thing. However, in patch 1.3 this thing was completely covered up, and not even in a way that made it look like there wasn't anything there in the first place. They just blocked this thing off in a stupid way. But despite covering it up, the chest was actually still inside. Some players on Reddit, armed with the knowledge from players who had previously gotten the chest when it was actually open as it was supposed to be, found ways to clip inside and still get it. But for people who weren't aware this area had a chest in it, coming to this area with the treasure compass was probably a mind-numbing, insanity-inducing process where you were just wandering around this whole freaking area wondering why the hell it keeps pointing you to a chest you seemingly cannot find. Which is evident by the comment section in this video here. These poor people, they did not deserve this. Some people probably looked for hours and didn't have the thought to look it up on Google, or just didn't know the right combination of words to search for to bring this up. Possibly the most famous undocumented change, and infamous at the same time, at least I couldn't find evidence of this actually being documented, was Barbara developing clinical depression. And by that I mean her voice actors changed completely.
Let the show begin! Let the show begin! Let the show begin! Let the show begin!
Which also happened in version 1.3. She used to sound kind of like a punk rock singer. She was really peppy and upbeat, but her voice was also like a little raspy, so I didn't really think it suited her looks. But now it sounds like she's being actively repressed by the church, which, I don't know, I guess it's more fitting, but like, come on, cheer up, Barbara. You even got new artifacts set to play with. And then aside from big changes like that you can notice, especially if you're familiar with the areas, there's far less significant changes, like them just adding animals throughout the world at random. Sometimes these are harder to notice because you might not go to these areas very often, but I'm fairly certain this bird cult never existed on this beach, but who knows? Outside of elite farming, I never really come here because there's no reason. Some events might bring you here, but like, you're not going to notice any changes then. And while this one is technically an undocumented bug and bug fix, Ryden used to have no idle voice lines, at least in the English version of the game. And I don't know about you, but after months of hearing
Osmanthus wine
is one of my favorite things about her, I wish they never fixed it. There's only so many times you can hear Zhongli talk about where you just want to never play with game sound on again. If you have any that you know existed at some point, or it's actually stayed in the game permanently and maybe not a lot of people noticed, I'd love to hear about them in the comments because I find this interesting, especially when they make no damn sense and cause others pain and suffering. So thanks for watching. Join the Discord if you want, Patreon if you also want to support me, links in the description for all that below, and bye.
Freeze to the core.